Hey everybody, welcome. We're live. It is Tuesday. It is power session time. Kind of experimenting with some new setups. I've got whiteboards galore to figure out how I want to do this best. So those of you that are used to being on here and seeing my itty bitty whiteboard that's right back there, or my bigger one that I just got that's on wheels, but decided today to go with the big one on the wall just to kind of try some different rooms. So if you can do me a favor as you're logging on, I'm also experimenting with some new toys. Like I've got a wireless lavalier mic that we usually just do for filming our videos and courses and different things like that. I've never connected it to my laptop for a Facebook Live before. So if you can let me know if the sound, if the audio is coming through loud and clear in the comments, that would be fantastic, just to let me know that you can hear me. I've got my laptop right over here just to make sure that I'm not totally disconnected. Putting the noise out on the whiteboards. Someone can give me a comment. I just want to make sure before we dive into this that you can hear me clearly. Otherwise, I'll jump over here and grab my external Yeti microphone, or even just go with the microphone on the webcam itself, just to make sure that everything is okay. So, pretty, I'm not sure what you mean by putting out on the whiteboards, putting the noise out. But if you guys can let me know, I'm just waiting for confirmation that audio is good, and then we'll rock and roll. So sorry for the delay. I just want to make sure that this is coming through loud and clear. I tested it on Zoom earlier, but I just wanted to make sure that the audio is good. And if that's because I'm not scrolling down. Okay. Sorry. Having a little scroll 7 moment for me, laughing at myself, because as Og said, man is most comical when they take themselves too seriously. I'm sitting here waiting for confirmation on the sound. It's because I hadn't scrolled down on the comments, which it doesn't do automatically for whatever reason. So anyway, we got that figured out. Excited to be with you today. Today we're talking about the 3 biggest reasons that personal development doesn't work for you. I think that's what Yep, 3 biggest reasons, 3 biggest challenges that personal development doesn't work. And I've talked about this on a lot of different stages to a lot of different audiences. We're going to go through that progression today. Now, first and foremost, for those of you who are new to what we do here at the Habit Finder, where we're coming from, there are typically 3 dimensions. Just a quick rundown in terms of where most people focus in terms of personal development. There are 3 dimensions. The first one, and most common, is behavior. Most people want to develop their behavior. They want to focus on what they do and don't do, what they want to start doing, what they want to stop doing, their strategies, their tactics, the implementation of their ideas. And behavior is super important, okay? This is the most common place that people focus on in personal development. And especially for people who don't realize they're doing personal development, simply by focusing on behaviors, what we do and don't do. So simply put, to do. Then we come up to the emotional, or as many people are familiar with it, okay, personality, which I love Dr. Joe Dispenza's definition of personality. Those are the emotions that you have memorized. And this is the next dimension, okay, of personal development, to get a little further, a little more elevated, a little higher end personal development, if you will. And this is all about what we feel. These are our feelings, our emotional spectrum, the instability and challenges of the hormones and chemicals of the body, and the impact that everything else has on it. Then if we were to go as far upstream as you can get, as far as you can go, okay, then we would get to habits of thinking. Okay? Which, pretty self-explanatory, is how you think. So most people focus on what they do and then pay attention to, after the fact, how they feel. And rarely do we get as far upstream as we can go in terms of breaking down how we actually think, when that's actually the correct order, in reverse. That we start with our habits of thinking, because how we think determines our reality. It determines how we react to things. It impacts our emotional state, the decisions we make, the actions we take, and ultimately the results that we create come from our thinking patterns. That's the source water. That's as far upstream as you can get. You start to shift your habits of thinking, then you can start to impact your emotional spectrum. You can stop letting go of labels like personality, like I am a 3, or I am a red, or I am a high D, or I am this, or I am that. And you can start to free yourself, liberate yourself of emotional titles, things you feel that are not definitions of who you are. They're actually more things that are limiting or dictating what you do and are being controlled by how you think. You see the relationship here? So we want to be able to address our habits of thinking to create higher levels of awareness in the emotional spectrum, get rid of labels that have been limiting us, that have been there to justify unhealthy habits of thinking and have been limiting what we can and can't do in our minds, to then be able to make sure that behavior becomes what it should be, and that is an outcome. We want behavior to become the outcome, what we do and don't do. Anyone ever start on a personal development journey and were here while paying attention to here and had a difficult time sustaining the change? A difficult time being able to adopt that new structure, that new behavior, and being able to sustain it. Well, you're fighting against the force of your habits of thinking, the construct of your reality. I love how Ed Milet puts it when he talks about the construct of a reality is a thermostat. And it's set at a particular temperature. You can do plenty of things in here and even here that are like lighting a fire to warm the room up or opening a window to cool it down. But as soon as that thermostat changes 1 degree, bam, it immediately deploys countermeasures to get it back to the space that it's used to its habits of thinking, to its natural construct, oftentimes known as your identity. It's what you identify with. And speaking of thermostats, I just realized my AC unit is off here in my office. I'm starting to feel it. So time out for just 2 seconds. Much better. Okay. Now we got that flowing so I don't turn into a big sweaty mess here. Okay. So it's really important to understand this. Now, if we were going to revolutionize the way we approach this, we knew we needed to provide one thing. We needed to make sure we could provide measurement. This was key. Measurement. If you can't measure it, you can't change it. If you can't measure it, you can't become as aware of it to be able to shift it and understand it. So we wanted to create measurement for this. There's plenty of measurement for this. Tons of psychological and personality-based tests. There's even behavioral tests and tendencies that will tell you quite a bit about these two and allude to this. We wanted to go right to the source and measure that. And that's what we did. In 2002, when we realized that carrying on the legacy of Og Mandino would require us to go deeper than we ever had before to understand what he spoke about in such a revelatory fashion 50 years ago, 50 years ago in the greatest salesman in the world, that we're going to need to get to the habits he was talking about, that we're a slave to. The part of our brain that he mentioned in scroll 1 of the greatest salesman in the world that never sleeps and creates your dreams, but makes you act in ways you do not comprehend. That's the construct of your mind. So we wanted to measure that, and so we created the Habit Finder profile. The Habit Finder profile is an assessment unlike anything you've probably experienced before. And if you haven't taken it, you can go to habitfinder.com and take it. Okay? It's not our bread and butter in terms of revenue. We want to share that with the world. And what we'd like to do is give you an opportunity to be able to gain a slightly higher level of awareness around that spectrum of your habits of thinking. And then if you're ready to take that on, because not everybody is, and that's totally okay. Some people just want to learn how to do the best with the thermostat that's already set and how to feel better about where they already are. And just be okay with that. No judgment. That's totally fine. If you want to just learn how to do the best with where you're currently at in life and feel really good about it, awesome. You've got a lot of great tools there. But if you're really ready to become an intentional creator, if you're really ready to find the comfort in being uncomfortable, in the habit of growth, finding the joy and ease that comes from mastery, not from avoidance, then you're going to find that out when you review your results in the Habit Finder profile. And we even offer 20, 30 minutes with one of our specialists to be able to review your results, because it's a lot of information. It's about 6.4 quadrillion variables. And we want to make sure you don't need to digest all of them. Okay, I've been working with this tool for almost 2 decades now, and it still blows me away at what it can create, what it can measure, what it can tell you. But it can be difficult to go through, especially if you've been operating heavily in the behavioral and especially the personality base and the emotional spectrum, because you're going to look at it with that lens, and you won't be looking at it in terms of the construct of your habits of thinking. So take advantage of that, because that's where this comes from. I've had the opportunity to assess over 150,000 entrepreneurs and business leaders. 150,000 data points in terms of how entrepreneurs think, how business leaders think, what really makes the difference. And of course, this lands us smack in the middle of what is called the personal development industry, which has gotten a little bit of a sour taste in it over the last decade. I'm not going to lie. It has heavily become a marketing game. You've got a lot of people out there who have never built anything, have never created anything other than the thing they're selling you, which is going to teach you how to build something they've never built, but because they can sell it to you, they've built something. I still don't understand how that makes a lot of sense. But we wanted to be able to dive into how the mind is actually working and not teach anything that doesn't actually progress the construct of your thoughts to make an impact on the awareness of your emotional spectrum, to be able to allow the doing to become a natural outcome of who you are becoming. That's really personal development, which is also professional development. Keep in mind, okay, a lot of people are like, I don't do personal development, I do professional development. Well, professional development is personal development. Leadership development is personal development. They're all in the personal development realm. They just have nuance. But keep in mind, any leadership or professional issues are personal issues in disguise. Period. End of story. Because when you can get to this spectrum, it's impossible to improve the way you think without it making an impact in every area of your life. You cannot adjust the spectrum, you cannot adjust the construct of your thoughts to become a better business person and not become a better parent or a better spouse or a better sibling or friend or coworker. It's impossible. Otherwise, you're still just dealing in artificial shifts to the thermostat in the behavioral and emotional realms. That's what's so fun about operating in this space. That's what's so fun about having access to over 150,000 business professionals, entrepreneurs, independent thinkers, to be able to take a look at what really moves the needle. Now, today, we're not as much talking about what moves the needle as what doesn't. Because Og talked about this in Scroll 1. Og Mandino, greatest salesman in the world. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up, listen to it, read it, whatever you can do to absorb that material. It's incredible, okay? The validation, okay, in psychology, in neurology, in kinesiology, all kinds of different things, a bunch of ologies that have validated Og's writing in the greatest salesman in the world, even just in the last decade or two, have been wild and crazy. And add on top of that, he wrote the core of that book, which are the 10 Scrolls of Success, in one night. It's pretty awesome. So, but in Scroll 1, he talked about how life isn't about a specific success. It's about success in general. It's a state of mind. Because if you have the state of mind of success, the construct of your thinking of success, you can apply it to anything you want to do. I know I keep pointing at this board and the 3 things are gone, but hopefully you still kind of have them in your mind. The construct of your thinking, your emotional spectrum, and your behavior. And what he said was success is a state of mind. It's a construct of thinking. Because if you have the construct of thinking, you can apply that to anything you want to do and create success with it. So he said learning the principles of this construct of thinking is actually about preventing failure, not about creating a specific type of success. So these three things I'm going to share with you today have a lot to do with the prevention of that failure. Number one, reason personal development doesn't work for most people is they are playing the wrong game. Most people are playing a philosophical game. A philosophical game to be able to create success. Thinking that it's just about ideas, that it's about ahas and insights and breakthroughs, right? These are the most worthless currency of personal development that there is when left to themselves. I mean, have you ever tried to pile up a whole bunch of ahas, a whole bunch of takeaways, and tried to take them down to your local bank and deposit them into your account? Have you ever tried to trade them for something? A purchase or a car or new carpet for your house or a vacation rental? It doesn't work. It doesn't work because in and of themselves, personal development is not a philosophical game. It is a biological game. There is biology that we are working with. There are certain rules and laws that have hundreds of years of research collectively around how the brain grows, how we develop it. Because this isn't just the construct of our thinking isn't just some kind of energy or some kind of feeling. It can certainly impact those things. This is an actual neurological construct of which neural pathways like to fire in certain situations that keep you safe. In other words, keep you predictable. That's the biological game. The biological game that we're battling, that the opponent that we have is not your lack of circumstances. It's not your opposition. It's not your lack of education. It's not that you're this or that or whatever, okay? I'm guarding myself from saying something that could get me in trouble, okay? So, but with that said, it is a biological game. And understanding our biology, more specifically our neurology, how the brain functions, can actually get us onto the right path. We want to understand that the game we're playing is battling the brain's desire to keep us predictable. The biological game that we're playing, the opponent, okay, like Bowser and Mario Brothers, is the brain's desire to keep us predictable. It's not the brain's fault. That's what it was designed to do. In fact, there's some things to be really grateful for, just like I can be really grateful for Bowser and Mario Brothers, because otherwise I would have missed out on hours of fun when I was younger, when I wasn't feeling well, recovering from surgery. Granted, I played Donkey Kong at that time a lot more than Mario Brothers. But with all that said, appreciating the opposition is really important. Having a healthy respect for the opposition is really important because there's some benefits to your brain wanting to keep you predictable. One of them being that it keeps you alive. That's really nice. The other one being that if you can change the thermostat and create a higher level of success on a habit level, on a construct of your thoughts level, that your brain will fight just as hard to keep that predictable as it has to keep your hitting the snooze button too many times, or you're beating yourself up because it hasn't been a perfect day and being way busier than productive, or bailing because of unmet expectations. It'll fight just as hard for your growth and your intentional creation when that becomes the habit, when no longer needing to figure everything out or do it perfectly starts to become the habit. A lot of beautiful things start to happen, and suddenly your brain wants to keep you predictably successful, not predictably stuck. But that takes time. So number one reason is people are playing the wrong game. It's not a philosophical game. It's not about feel-goods, ahas, and insights, okay? Breakthroughs. I mean, who wants to break through anything? That sounds painful, okay? Unnecessarily painful, when we'd rather understand it and put the work in to deconstruct it and unpack it. Because I find that people that need to break through everything end up needing to continue to break through everything. And eventually you reach the point where you put your shoulder against that wall to break through and it just can't take anymore. Versus putting the more difficult work in. Og even said it, muscle can split a shield and even destroy life. Putting the difficult work in of love. Putting the difficult work in of persistence, of awareness, of value, multiplied value, of how of being more present in the now, understanding our emotions, we can start to unpack this thing and start to play the right game, the biological game, and understand that we are battling against a brain that is trying to keep us predictable. So stop getting so frustrated with how you're naturally wired, how your brain is naturally wired, and learn how to use it. Learn how to play the game so that you can win the game. Which brings us to number two. Number two is that most people try to grow too fast. Okay? Part of this comes from the fact that over 90% of entrepreneurs, as measured in the Habit Finder profile, over 90% have that third measurement, intentional, way over to the right. Okay? It's the third measurement down. When it's way over to the right, you are at risk of your mind always being hundreds of miles ahead of your current reality. Hundreds of miles ahead of your current reality, figuratively speaking, and sometimes literally speaking, depending on what you're pursuing. It can create a Learjet in a nanosecond. It can see the success that you've always wanted to create while you're driving home from work, zoning out into the windshield. I mean, it's pretty amazing how the brain works. But the reason it's a risk when that measurement goes way over to the right is because you're able to see your life 100 miles ahead so vividly that your brain starts to believe that that is your current reality. And as soon as your brain starts believing that the future is your current reality and that your current reality shows up differently, we got a war going on because the body is now reacting in a chemical way. Okay, let me give you some visuals. Okay, so here is someone's current reality, and here's them. And most people don't like their current reality. Boo. And so they focus on the future. And if you've got that measurement, intentional, over to the right, the future can be seen so vividly, they call it a new mental construct. You build a new mental construct. This becomes the new reality into your brain. In that moment, this doesn't exist. I already have the Ferrari. I'm already building wells in Africa. I'm already doing all kinds of charitable things and making lots of money and traveling and freedom, whatever it is, into our future. But then our current reality sneaks back up on us and does something, usually pulling the rug out from under us. Okay? And so suddenly we get reminded of our current reality. And there's a big conflict that happens here now because our body responded to this, which caused it to release chemicals into the body of norepinephrine, which can be really euphoric, can feel amazing. Your body starts reacting to the future as if it actually happened. So when your current reality comes in and this mess occurs, now you're in total conflict. Your brain, as far as the control of its nervous system, as far as some of the most core parts of the brain wired, your amygdala, in fact, starts having this conflict. It starts to shut down. It doesn't totally black out, okay? It usually does something we call a brownout, where it starts releasing these nasty things called fear dendrites. And all of a sudden, your practical judgment, your common sense, your intuition starts to go, and you start acting irrationally. You lose some of your passion, some of your excitement for life. Things just seem dull or difficult. The day just drags on because you're in an amygdala hijack, as Dan Goleman would call it from Harvard, because we created a new mental construct of our future. Our current reality showed up, and now we're in this major conflict, all because we tried to get here too fast. We tried to get to the future, creating impatience because we could see in our mind vividly, and then it didn't show up in 30 seconds. As I've heard us reference to constantly, we're kind of a microwave society, and we tried to get there too fast. We overextended. We overshot. We tried to implement everything at the same time rather than incremental implementation, rather than the millimeters of life. That's the key to playing the second part of this game, is now that we've made a commitment to play the right game, we can understand that the right way to play it is not play it fast. It is to play it in millimeters. Millimeters are key. Now, same situation. We can go to the future, not to build a new mental construct of what life could be like when, but to be inspired. So we bring something inspired back into our mind that can now make an impact on our current reality in millimeters. In fact, as an output, you'll know you went into the future productively because you'll come back focused on the millimeters rather than focused on these big, abstract, broad strokes that often get us into frustration, overwhelm, stress, confusion, and the things that hold us back to keep us predictable. So you'll want to grow at the appropriate pace, which is in millimeters, one step at a time, understanding that it doesn't take a lot of growth to create a tremendously different result in your life. Being just a little kinder to people can make one of the biggest shifts in your life that you could ever imagine. Listening just a little bit more to your kids or to your spouse can make massive shifts in those areas. Why not our business? Why not what we're doing? Well, likely because we're getting caught up on the future that we wish we had, which makes our current reality frustrating and cuts off the opportunity to get inspired ideas and act on them, creating passion, and then getting more inspired ideas and acting on them and creating passion and continuing to serve and add value to this world. But we'd rather grow too fast. We'd rather create major challenges by surrendering to our mind being so far ahead of us and just longing to be there. I spoke in Las Vegas on Friday, got to hang around for the next couple of days with an incredible company that had me come down to be their opening keynote. It was amazing. And that's one of the things we talked about. We were talking about belief, confidence, and joy. And one of the keys to those three things is understanding that there doesn't exist. The ultimate goal is to live in such a way, playing the right game, incrementally growing. When we play the game the right way, there becomes here. The more vividly we play out scenarios of what there will be like, causing here to not be appreciated, we're teaching ourselves that even if we do get there and it becomes here, we're not going to appreciate it. I know that sounds impossible to understand right now. That you might be in major emotional distress. You might be in major financial distress, which is the most common time that your brain wants to be able to go there, to escape, to feel better. But you're teaching your brain to not appreciate here. And if you are able to somehow find a way to do the work in spite of this challenge and to be able to create it, and there does become here, here is going to be very disappointing. Because while you did the work, you taught your brain that here is always going to be disappointing. Here is never going to be as good as there. And we want to break that pattern now. And one of the ways that we can do that is to slow down our development. You don't have to slow down your activity, but we want to slow down our development. Do you find your pace? A huge challenge to this is comparison, but the biggest one is number 3. The third biggest reason personal development doesn't work for people, expectations. Ooh, these things are nasty. Expectations defined as a concrete condition for happiness. Think about that. Things you've expected in your life become concrete, solid conditions, meaning they need to be met to reach the objective, which is happiness. Meaning if we don't meet our expectations, with which 100% of the population experiences unmet expectations, if we don't, the more we've invested emotionally in these expectations, the more challenging the life that we have to live, the more challenging the energy we have to give, and the more difficult it'll ever become to create a new mental construct, to be able to create a new habit of thinking that will support us in being able to bring there here. Expectations are killers. One of the things that it most commonly does early on in people's personal development journeys, or when they decide to retrench, all right, I'm going to be so much better today. Okay, it's usually Monday or the start of a new month or January. It seems to be one of those magical times, and it's time. This is going to be different, but we're not paying as close attention to the expectations that we're setting. And what starts to happen is here's you. Here's the things you're doing wrong. Here's the things that you're doing right. Simple equation, right? If you do more of these and less of these, you will succeed. It's pretty simple as that. If you do more of these and less of these, you'll find success. You'll find progression. Period. End of story. But here's one of the challenges that expectations create. Expectations are all or nothing. Concrete conditions for happiness. They are right. They are wrong. How you doing? I'm all right. Are you all right? Because that's something you might be experiencing. In fact, most people say I'm all right when they're having a tough time, when they're okay, you know, like this kind of okay. And understanding that is interesting because they're usually, in most cases, a victim of expectation, unmet expectations. And ironically enough, that comes from a mind that wants to be all right, or else it is all wrong. And it can't be all wrong because that means that you are all wrong, and that means that you don't deserve to live. That's how extreme this part of the brain gets. So as we get expectations, we've got the things that we're doing wrong, the things that we're doing right, we start to turn up the awareness. It's inevitable. When you start to dive into personal development, you start to read good books, listen to great mentors, start to improve yourself, whether you're playing the right game or not and doing it the right way or not, when you get into expectations, or you get into personal development rather, you're turning up the awareness, okay? So awareness gets turned up, but you don't get to decide where the volume gets turned up in terms of this equation. The more you become aware of the things you want to be doing right, the more aware you naturally become of the things that you're doing wrong. And here's what happens. The right things become too right, and the wrong things become too wrong. And they end up feeling worse and worse and worse, and the right things feel further and further and further away. This is such a common scenario for people that are retrenching, and after the kind of the honeymoon phase wears off, or the excitement of an event or a good book we read kind of wears off, and now it's time to face our construct. It's time to face our habits of thinking, because we no longer have the enthusiasm or the optimism to overcome the noise that has been dictating way more of our lives than we care to admit. And so now it's time to increase our awareness, but we inevitably, as we do that, attach it to expectations, and suddenly the things we should change become too right. They become out of reach. And the things that we're doing wrong become too wrong, and we beat the crap out of ourselves for the things that we're still doing, even though we just decided now that it's going to be different, and thinking that now that I'm conscious of it, okay, that I can do it differently. Well, reconstructing habits of thinking isn't a matter of consciousness. It's a matter of the actual neural pathways. Remember the biological game that are supporting you? And if you're trying to jump too fast to what's right, you're going to be disappointed and overly frustrated with what's now too wrong. And you're creating this Jean-Claude Van Damme scenario where you're totally in the splits between the two. And you never get an opportunity to be. You never get an opportunity to be, because all you are is not right enough and too wrong, because you can't reach that, because your mind's run way ahead of it and created these expectations, these concrete conditions for happiness. And the further that gets ahead of where you are, as you increase the volume of your awareness, the more painful this feels. We end up stretching ourselves and stretching ourselves and stretching ourselves until we say, screw this, I can't do this, and whoosh, snap back in place. And then, of course, we have to recover before we go, okay, it's going to be different. But then we jump right back in with an expectation, with an obligation, with the have to, should, must, supposed to kind of energy, because that's how we try and get there. We focus on what we have to do to get there, what we're supposed to do to get there, what we must do to get there. But when we want to, we're here. When we get to, we're here. When we choose to, we're here. And when you do that, you get to start pulling there into here. rather than try and chase down some place that you can never arrive at. That destination does not exist. That's why one of the greatest principles that we spend weeks on with our clients is just joy in the journey. It's embracing here, right now, choosing you and everything that comes with it. It's the only way to invite there to show up here. Because if you go chasing there, it's like chasing money. It usually runs. Money is an interesting one. We'll talk about that on another one. Most people have a horrible relationship with money, and it's one of the most beautiful things you could have a great relationship with. I mean, if you treated your friends the way you treat money, would you still be friends? You know, you show up at the party and it's, oh, hey, okay, there's going to be some people here, and I don't want them to know that I really like you and that I want more of you. So if you could kind of keep your distance, because I appreciate what you do, but I don't love who you are, which is how most of us approach money. But I mean, money is energy. Money is a mirror that is a wonderful evaluation of where we're at. But that's going to be a little bit more advanced until we take care of these three things. Are we playing the right game? Are we playing at the right speed? And are we playing with the right expectations? Which would be, in this argument, to make the extreme point for pattern disruption, no expectations. Doesn't mean we don't have goals, we don't have objectives, we just don't have concrete conditions for happiness. We have principles that allow us to live not a life of expectation, but a life of inevitability. That's when things get really fun, really exciting. My time is up. I hope these insights have helped you. Again, if you haven't jumped onto habitfinder.com and taken your assessment to learn a little bit about what thought processes are contributing to the game you think you're playing, what's contributing to the speed at which you're playing it at, if you're even playing it at all, and what's contributing to your expectations, and countless other things to be able to build that construct of thinking, to be able to become more aware of your emotional spectrum, be able to have more influence on it, and have what you do be a natural outcome of who you are. Thanks for joining us today. Everybody take care. If you like this background, you like this particular setup, please put in the comments, big whiteboard, okay? Put big whiteboard in the comments if you like this, and we'll do this setup again. I think this works out pretty good. Gives me some pretty good room here. I think the lighting, looking at the camera, comes across okay. Okay, hopefully the microphone came through well. I want to make sure you can hear me loud and clear, even when I'm turning away, which was one of the advantages of using this wireless mic. But thanks everybody for jumping on today for the power session. If you know someone who could really benefit from this session, please share this with them. Hit share right now, tag them in the comments, give them an opportunity to experience some of these principles to start to shift the paradigms, because there aren't a lot of people. I've been around for quite some time speaking all over the world. There aren't a lot of people that know how to build this. Plenty of great tips, insights, and ahas about damage control, about emotional management, and about the things you're supposed to do, even though you can never seem to sustain them, no matter how much sense they make when you hear them in the seminar. Because the thermostat, the habits of thinking, that's what we want to shift. Start by measuring them, then we'll explore them, then we'll see what kind of ROI, what kind of return on investment could be created in your life if you were able to align them and shift them, whether in your relationship, your health and vitality, or the success in your business. All of that being personal development. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day. Bye.